Hello, Garland Nixon here with a man who is both wise and cynical. And I kind of think those two things kind of go together. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and hold on here. I'm making an adjustment here. Got to make an adjustment. Oops, to make sure we get everybody involved. Our dear friends over on Rockfin may miss out on Mark Sleboda, and we can't have that. All right, Mark, let's get going. Mark is straight out of Moscow. Before we go any further, Mark, where can people find you online and to keep up with all of your good works?
You can follow me at The Realpolitik on Boosty. You can follow and support me there. It is like Patreon, but sanctions proof, baby. Other than that, you can follow me on the evil American oligarch Elon Musk's Twitter X at Mark Sleboda1. And you can follow me also unsupportive on Substack and Telegram at The Realpolitik with Mark Sleboda.
And for those of you who are wondering about this Boosty business, there you go. Boosty. The Realpolitik with Mark Sleboda. And every single person, we got tens of thousands of people watching this. So I expect everybody to go over there and become a subscriber, and everybody to go over there and share this on all your social media. People need to see what's happening with Mark. People, this is a critical time. So go, there you go. That's boosty.to, boosty.to/The Realpolitik.
There is 3 pieces of exclusive content that come out a week there. And you get to join our private Discord channel where you can hang out and argue or discuss with like-mindeds and chat with me and others in the voice channels and all of that good Discord stuff.
Oh, that sounds like fun. All right. So there we go, everybody. You got to find, if you want to know what's happening straight out of Moscow. Mark, the President Putin has been giving speeches and talking, and things have been said recently.
Much speeches, so much talking.
Yeah, so let's get started. Since again, for those of you who don't know, Mark is in Moscow, and it's great for us to get a perspective from a person who is a U.S. You still have U.S. citizen, expat living in Moscow, whatever.
Russian citizen.
He's a Russian citizen. He's a smart guy. Anyway, Mark, President Putin's been doing a lot of talking lately. Any tidbits that really stuck out to you?
Okay, so I would say the first thing. So where he's speaking at is the annual St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, which is basically a big international forum designed to increase foreign investment in Russia, to showcase what Russia has to offer, how you can invest and make money, doing good development work in Russia. The theme this year, common growth. Okay, no one's against that. I think one of the most the interesting developments is while there's a number of foreign leaders there, right, who have come there. The special guest of honor of this year's St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the Indonesian president, and I really have to learn how to say this, Prabowo Subianto. Okay, and it is actually unforgivable that I actually don't already know that. And as Russia pointed out, Indonesia is a rising regional power, and has the potential to be a global power because of its amount of resources, its very large population, its very interesting ethnic cultural mix, which really makes for a dynamic country. spread out among, I don't know, 10,000 islands. It's quite interesting. Anyway, Russia and Indonesia just signed a new strategic partnership on the right before the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum began. That's why he's the guest of honor, and this is supposed to, align Russia and Indonesia on a lot of economic matters, but also on tourism. Ease of visas, traveling to each other's countries, culturally, also the potential for strategic military technical cooperation. And doubtless it will lead to increasing political coordination at the United Nations.
Okay. I saw some quotes online about some things that President Putin has said about Ukraine, maybe taking Sumy or not taking Sumy, things like that. But you never know how true those things are. Have you heard him say anything about Ukraine recently that's of any consequence?
Okay, so actually, first let's discuss. It wasn't quite at the St. Petersburg. Well, actually, it was in the kind of the introduction of it more than a day ago. What he said about Iran, and this was kind of shocking to me, and I think to a lot of other people, not just in the alt media, but even in the mainstream media. So, if you'll remember, we've discussed it multiple times before. Russia and Iran agreed on and signed a new strengthened, deepened strategic partnership a few months ago. But there's a few things that kind of slipped by us. One is that the Iranian parliament just finally ratified, the Russian parliament the Duma had done it earlier, but the Iranian parliament had just ratified it on Monday, right after Israel had already attacked Iran. Another interesting thing that Putin led on is there was just automatically assumed, and I certainly assumed as well, that this strategic partnership included not just economic and social and political agreements, but also military and military technical, defense sector, if you want to call it that. It didn't. It didn't have any military clauses whatsoever. In fact, evidently, Russia had proposed a mutual defense treaty as part of the strategic partnership with Iran, similar to what Russia has with North Korea. Now, he didn't give us all the details, but that could very well include a mutual defense clause, similar to NATO's own Article 5. And Iran declined. Evidently, Putin went on. He even tried to suggest a joint Russian, Chinese, Iranian treaty in that regard, and Iran wasn't interested. One, they said they weren't interested in bloc formation. Two, they I don't know at what level, whether we're talking the level of the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini, or the level of the current Iranian president, Pezeshkian. But they wanted to improve relations with the West, and they saw strengthening ties with Moscow as something that would be a detriment to that. Now, we know that Pezeshkian ran for office as a moderate on a campaign, naive as F, that he wanted to work at improving relations with the West, which you can't improve relations with the West. You're on the chopping block. Your dinner
And the sheep are trying to work on a deal to improve relations with the wolves. You're on there. They intend to eat you.
Yes. So evidently, they thought because Russia was involved essentially in a proxy war with the United States, they didn't want any part of that. They didn't want to. They didn't want to get involved in that. They didn't want to be associated with Russia. They feared, get this, that it would lead to a direct confrontation with the United States. If
Well, they were
they
wrong. That's
with
not
Russia.
what. Yeah, they were wrong.
They
That
were
didn't.
wrong.
Yeah, about what would lead. The fact that they were alive and they have oil and they are currently not under the umbrella of the U.S. empire means
Just yeah, just the fact that they are an independent, sovereign regional power in the Middle East, that is a challenge to U.S. hegemony in the Middle East, right? The primary challenge to U.S. hegemony in the Middle East, right? So evidently, Russia also proposed, as a either and or, right? What everyone, including me, had long automatically assumed that Russia would help be assisting Iran to build an integrated, interconnected, multi-layered air defense and electronic warfare system, particularly as this. While it has been worked on for years, supposedly, the strategic partnership really came to fruition in the aftermath of the two brief exchanges of long-range strikes between Iran and Israel last year. So that made perfect sense to everyone. And everyone I know assumed that that's what was happening. And Putin tells us that Iran wasn't interested. Now, should we do? I think now is a time to call for the legendary, the epic Picard double facepalm. Because if Iran had agreed to this with Russia and expedited it and hadn't waited, Israel would not be attacking Iran right now.
no question.
We would not be discussing the United States about to begin a major war on Iran in the coming hours and days. It would not happen because a mutual defense with Russia, that would mean going to war with Russia.
Wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't happen. But, I mean,
it would mean that it would mean that Iran was under Russia's effectively nuclear umbrella. You know what I'm saying? Effectively, that wouldn't be what it was, but it would be if you attack them, you attack them, you attack a nuclear country. Everything is unspoken at that point.
Absolutely. And
how about this, Mark? I got to say one thing. Remember, for all of these years, everybody told us, yeah, Kim Jong-un, he's a crazy man. It seems like, in hindsight, when you look around at all of these countries, seems like pretty much he was the smartest one all along.
I can't argue with that in the slightest. I can't speak of the man personally. We don't know a lot. But if we talk North Korean leaders, right, and where North Korea was even 10 years ago, North Korea now is permanently out of economic isolation. They are permanently out of political isolation. They have a military ally such that a mutual defense treaty with Russia, they don't need to fear a U.S. South Korean attack on them anymore, because that would automatically, according to their treaty, draw Russia in. So economically, politically, military stability, security, plus he's got his nuclear deterrent. Iran, if you had a nuclear deterrent, this would also not be happening. And I understand that the Ayatollah Khomeini put out a fatwa saying it's against Islamic law, and that's an interesting interpretation right now. But the reason they are using, not even weapons of mass destruction, right? Because everyone knows that the Israelis have been crying Iran is about to develop nuclear weapons since 1984, right? I mean, talk about the boy who cried wolf, right? But it's not even about nuclear enrichment. Let's be honest, but this is regime change. This is about hegemony. This is about cementing control of the Middle East. This is part of a long, decade-long plan for regime change in Iran, and Israeli officials have said it outright, to create a new Middle East. The same kind of neocon conceit we heard when the U.S. went into Iraq already more than 2 decades ago. So that same people, the same ideas. Now they've already taken care of Libya. They've taken care of Iraq. They've taken care of Syria, which opened up the skies. Cleared an air defense-free corridor now right to Iran. And within 6 months of Syria no longer being an obstacle or an ally, and all of the rest of the Shiite axis of resistance being mauled, right? Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Ansar Allah movement, right? Hamas still fighting for survival. They've all been mauled, and they don't have the ability right now to come to Iran's defense, by going on the offense against Israel. So this is a multi-year plan all the way leading up to this now. The one thing that could have averted that is Russia and Iran treaty-wise officially standing together. And we don't know all the details, but that is my understanding of what Putin has said at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum in the run-up to it about this. And I went on further and said that even since this has began, or the Israeli attack has began, Iran has not asked Putin, has not asked Russia for military assistance. Now, I have to imagine there's still some, intelligence sharing, satellite data. Yeah. But I had assumed about the air defense, right? And my first thought was, wow. I know it would take years to build up a complete air defense network for Iran. But I thought, in the opening hours, at least, Israel really shut down Iran's air defense hard. And I'm like, wow, what have the Russians been up to for the last half a year? Nothing, because there was no agreement on air defense. So, even if they hadn't agreed on a mutual defense treaty, the simple beginnings of Russia evolved. Russia has the best air defense. You can talk David's boomerang and the iron sieve all you want, right? We've seen it on display this week. But Russia, hands down, has the best air defense system in the world. And that alone would really be assisting Iran right now. That type of, even if it had just begun. So I don't know what to say, Iran. You really, I know there's history. Iran is a prickly country because of the millennia of existence of Persia, of course, about their sovereignty, about their independence. The Islamic Revolution didn't want to become too entangled with foreign powers. They didn't want any foreign troops on their territory. I understand they have a bad history of that, the British Empire and the Americans and everything. And Russia and Iran have some bad blood in history, right? Most of that, of course, goes back to what I think you could consider ancient history. But even in World War II, the Soviet Union and the United Kingdom invaded Iran out of fears that Iran was about to join the Axis powers. And over the course of World War II, went in, one from the north, one from the south, and made sure that would not happen. So there's history, right? And there are historical reasons to mistrust Russia. But over the last few decades, I don't know. There is the fact, something that I criticized at the time, when Medvedev became president and Russia was flirting with the West in the early 2000s, that Russia held off on its agreement to provide Iran with S-400s.
Yeah.
They got put on hold for a long time, and I thought that was a mistake at the time. But the Russia was doing the same thing that Iran evidently was trying to do, in the run up to this, which is, trying to get on the good side of the beast, and it's just not going to happen. As long as, if you have any pretense of having a sovereign, independent country in foreign policy, then you're just on the waiting list for the hegemon's attention.
We must all bow our heads and give an apology to the leaders of North Korea. They never, I can think of this. They never one time deluded themselves into thinking that this monster could be their friends, would be their friends in every way. And I look at them and I say, they were right. And in the end, when everybody else, well, here, we'll give you our weapons of mass, we'll give you this. They said, no, we'll give you nothing. And when they said, you can't have nukes, they developed nukes and then nobody would touch them. They went through a lot. But ultimately, they would have years ago been attacked and overthrown if they hadn't maintained the course. I look at it and I'm like, and look at them now. Granted, they got they attacked them in all of these and laughed at them. They had some ship that they tried to launch and the ship turned over and they were like, see, they can't even put a ship in the water. And now they got their ship floated back up and off they go. They're getting all kinds of good stuff. Anyway, let's get to here, Mark. This is critical. Nobody's talking about Ukraine. Poor old forgotten Ukraine. The Ukrainians, they're getting the bad news, Ukrainians. You're getting no air defense missiles. You're getting no money. You're getting no nothing. You're done. You're finished. We're all wearing blue and yellow. I saw Trump the other day and he had the yellow, he had a blue and yellow with the yellow tie on. That's all they're going to do. You're going to get symbolism. Walmart changed their colors literally to the Ukraine flag. That's all you get now. You're done. You're finished. They should have, they're going to get what they got coming to them. Anyway, Ukraine, what's up, Mark?
Yeah. Ukraine is the proverbial jilted lover, right? And when times get hard, thou shalt not mistake the mistress for the wife, because the mistress is going to be kicked out of the condo, and those Ferrari payments are going to stop, and that's the end, right? And that's the situation they're at right now. Trump was obviously. He doesn't like Zelensky. He doesn't much care about Ukraine. He's the U.S. president. But now getting involved with a conflict with Iran gives him an even bigger excuse to ignore Ukraine. And that's what he's doing. Zelensky and Trump were supposed to meet at the G7 summit in the last week. Ukraine's just always invited to all these things anyway. But Trump evidently got bored and frustrated and left early and just completely blew off his meeting with Zelensky. So he was completely stood up on that regard. And the girlfriends Starmer and Macron tried to console him.
Look, true story, Mark. This is what it reminded me of. True story. When I used to do stuff on Capitol Hill, a member of Congress whose girlfriend was coming in. She was this California beauty from I ain't going to go no further with that, who she was, but she was coming in for her, meeting with the congressman, right? And one of his buddies called me and said, "Hey, Garland, we got a problem." I said, "We got a problem?" "No, we do. Congressman so-and-so has said his wife's coming in town, and he wants us to take his girlfriend out and show her a good time and take her blah, blah, and hang out with her." So I was assigned along with someone else to, in fact, take out the congressman's girlfriend to hang out and all that kind of stuff, to kind of keep her busy for a day or two while his wife was in town, until his wife went back, and then he could go for it. So, bottom line though, the girlfriend comes to town. "Oh yes, I'm going. Yeah, but I'll show you around." When the wife comes to town, "Here, I got a couple of guys," and it was one of those things. "Oh, we'll take care of you later. You'll be duly rewarded. But right now, I need you to get this girlfriend out of the way, because the wife's here." Well, bad news. Ukraine, the girlfriend, the wife is back in town.
The wife is back,
and Garland ain't gonna come to Kiev and pick you up and take you out and show you a good time. Yeah, that ain't what I'm gonna do.
Are you going to take Zelensky out? Show him a good time like that?
I don't think anybody's going to take the green shoe shine janitor boy out. He's done. He's finished. He's through. And I think, have you hearing anything out of Ukraine that they're starting to didn't some MP say something about, "I think we're going to be broken up into a lot of pieces"?
Bezuglaya, yeah. I mean, she's long been, shall we say, on a hawkish critic of Zelensky in the course of the war. She used to be part of Zelensky's Servant of the People party, but she's kind of staked out her own, political future independent, and she poses as a hawk, but critical over the course of the war and Zelensky. But she's still within the Maidan regime.
Okay.
But yeah, she has started to sound the alarm that many are standing. And it's not just Zelensky. The Western press was talking this week. Yermak is Zelensky's powerful chief of staff. Many people regard him as a gray cardinal, right? A Cardinal Richelieu. Maybe some suggest that he's the real power, the real decision maker in Ukraine. Well, Yermak has basically been in Washington almost every other week, for years now. And the way, on top of everything else, the Western mainstream media, it came out this week that not even just in the White House, but in DC, they kind of find Yermak annoying. They're kind of sick of him. That he's abrasive, that he's demanding, right? They don't even know what he's always doing here, so that was another rebuff this week. So yeah, Hegseth made clear that at least at the moment, unfortunately, this administration changes its mind, every 15 minutes or so. But as of this moment, they've basically said that the U.S. is giving no more military aid to the Kiev regime in Ukraine. In fact, anti-drone missiles, 20,000 anti-drone missiles that Biden had built. They're kind of a jury-rigged thing anyway. They're old dumb bombs with a guidance. But they could have helped with drones at least. But Trump said, nope, they're not going to the Kiev regime. I've got something cooking in the Middle East. This was already 3 weeks ago. I got something cooking in the Middle East that I'm not going to talk too much about now, but we might need those anti-drone for our own troops at our own bases in the Middle East. So a little bit of foreshadowing. Trump knew exactly what was happening before it happened, of course. They were making plans, and they were diverted. Instead of going to Ukraine, they went to U.S. troops in the Middle East, which that makes sense. I mean, the only thing that didn't make sense is he just didn't give them right away to Israel because of Trump's Israel first policy. But, anyway.
Well, I don't even call it that. I call Donald Trump vice president now, Vice President Trump. He's the vice president of Israel. That's what he is. He's Netanyahu's vice. He waits for his orders from the president, apparently. And let me ask you this. Did you see that Tucker Carlson interview with Ted Cruz?
Ted Cruz. Yeah, it was kind of brutal. That was. I mean, what do you expect from these neocons? I mean, I don't expect anything more, but it's that trope, right? That old joke that Americans only discover geography when they start a war with another country, right? When they invade another country in particular. Well, I mean, there's a truism to that. It should scare people because this man is not only a senator, but he's a powerful senator, right? Foreign relations committee, all of these. He is one of the key people making decisions in this country, including pushing for he's one of those pushing the loudest and the hardest for over a decade now for this war. And if he doesn't even have a ballpark figure about the population, about the ethnic breakdown, I'm sure he does. He doesn't know anything, I'm quite sure, about Iran's quite complex system of government, their system of checks and balances and different institutions of the government, which is something that even poli-sci people need to sit down and take seriously if they're going to learn it, because it is a fairly complicated political system. I mean, there's the impression, it's a theocratic dictatorship ruled by the mullahs. It's always the mullahs. As soon as that word comes out of someone's mouth in reference to Iran, it's a neocon. I mean, it's just you can. Just
wait a minute. They're a theocratic dictatorship, right? Really? Yeah. Where did your policies come from? The Bible tells me in the Old Testament that Israel and praise the Lord and well, what was it about Iran to get their theocratic dictatorship? Who'd want this in a perfect democracy? Really? And what country do you work for? I only got into the Senate because I want to defend Israel. Israel? So this is an America last. This is the America last crew. It was supposed to be America first, but it's Israel first. America, it's MIGA, right? Make Israel great again. America last. They need to change that red hat to a blue hat. That's what they need. They need a blue hat with white writing, the color of the Israel flag that says "Make Israel Great Again," and that's it. But they're the MIGAs.
Maybe you saw the Twitter. I saw a Twitter post and a joke that was going viral that, someone saying we cannot allow this extremist, fanatic death cult to have nuclear weapons. And I'm like, who are you talking about, Israel or the U.S.? They both already have nuclear weapons.
Exactly. That's where we are, Mark. One of the other things too is, it appears to me that sometime in the maybe not so distant future, Ukrainians are going to be running a little short of weapons. Yeah. It seems to me that the time is coming where they're going to reach for some, hey, hand me another a magazine can. Well, I can give you the magazine box, but there ain't nothing inside it. You can hold that up in front of you and hope to hold that, hope the actual magazine box, throw it at the Russians, but ain't going to be nothing inside. Not saying they don't have anything at all. Seems to me they're going to run out. And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think that's maybe they got a lot more than we think? I don't know. We're just guessing, I guess.
No. No. I mean, it's quite clear from the results on the battlefield, which have kind of slipped below the headlines, of course, over the last 2 weeks. But there was at least one article this week where the Washington Post admitted that Russia is now taking 15 to 20 square kilometers a day. And they're not suffering big, heavy casualties while doing it. And again, they're still in the attrition phase. So that's almost, they're still focused on destroying the Kiev regime military, not scooping up territory. There'll be enough time for that when it's over. That's just in the course of things falling into their hands now. So what is going on with the Israeli-U.S. war on Iran? So the primary goal of the Iranian government is to survive, right? That's their standard of victory, right? For Israel and the U.S., the standard is regime change. For the Iranian government, the standard of victory is survival at this point, right? Yes, but that's because of the power imbalance, who attacked who, and everything else. So for Russia, as long as the Iranian government survives, right? That's a caveat and an asterisk and everything. But as long as that is true, then this is good for Russia. Right? That's a cold-blooded, realpolitik. It has nothing to do with my sympathy, my very real sympathy for the Iranian people, for even the Iranian state, and of course what it means for the Palestinian people on top of this. But from a simply realpolitik, realist, cold-blooded perspective, in the Kremlin, as long as the Iranian government survives and things don't go nuclear, of course, then this is good for Russia. The first thing we've already talked about, right? Simply the political capital of Ukraine is gone, right? And all of Washington is focused on Iran at this moment and looks likely to be so. So he's got zero political capital. He's getting zero military aid from the United States now. That they're not even talking about letting him buy weapons because the U.S. needs all its weapons, right? It needs air defense interceptors desperately, right? It's short of them for Israel, for its own bases in the Middle East, everything. They're not getting anything.
Didn't they just say they couldn't pay? Didn't they just go bankrupt anyway? Didn't they just say we can't pay 600 and some million that they own? They couldn't buy it anyway.
We're assuming that would be with European money.
Oh yeah,
but,
yeah.
Which would just be debt anyway. But that's neither here nor there. It's all funny money, right? Going around. So huge problem for them on the military side. We already know their manpower woes, which are only getting worse. And now on top of all of this, there's the factor that economically, Russia was already doing good. Now, the price of oil and gas are blazing through the roof and only look set to climb to stratospheric levels when the U.S. attacks Iran. They, on top of the problems with oil, the Israelis have already hit the South Pars gas field in Iran, right? And they said that it has partially stopped production. I don't know what partially means. Is it 10%? Is it 90%? All right, we don't know these things. And both sides, right, have a reason now to downplay damage to their own country and to, exaggerate the damage they have done to the opposing country. So, we have to watch that. But we know the South Pars gas field was hit. It is certainly the largest gas field in the Middle East, and arguably it's the largest gas field in the world, right? In terms of proven reserves, accessible proven reserves. So that gas is going to be climbing along with oil. That sets Russia's coffers for the rest of the year plus looking pretty, right? So they won't have any problems. They'll have extra money for the military, and their economy will continue to hum along. It already was fine. Now it's going to be great, even, you could say. So this is a consequence, right? Of and easily, you go to war with Iran, right? And Iran hasn't even exercised their nuclear option, which is stopping the flow of oil through the Gulf of Oman, through which I believe it's something like a third, it's somewhere between 20% and a third of all global oil passes through that Gulf every day.
And the other, another thing I think, Mark, that I take into consideration, and that is, look, I've heard a lot of people say there is great fear amongst some of the Gulf monarchies that they could be in danger of being overthrown, that their citizens could get blah, blah, blah. the possibility, if they're smart, some kind of an oil embargo like the 70s. You know what I mean? There's a possibility that if they get scared and jumpy and they start looking over their shoulders, they'll have no choice. They could do some kind of an oil embargo with the U.S. in order to drive the U.S. into, you know what I mean? There's all of these things. I'll put it like this. There ain't nothing that's going to happen that's going to bring the price of oil down. Russia's going to be counting their dollars very, very shortly. They'll make, it's going to be, I mean, and this is a bad thing. I ain't happy about it, but this is, as you said, this is a cold-blooded reality. And here's the other part. They further demilitarized NATO because all of the NATO ships and all that stuff are going to be there.
Yeah. And think of it from the Chinese perspective now. Of course, as the price of oil and gas goes up, that's not good for China, right? Because they are, of course, a net importer of both. Yeah. But the other thing, the other side of this, again, as long as the Iranian government survives, and it has to be said for China, China gets a significant amount of oil and gas from Iran as well as Russia, right? So
16%.
Yes,
16%. They buy 84% of Iran's oil.
Yes,
but it counts for 16% of their
of China's
total
imports.
Yeah.
So on top of that, a new high-speed train, part of the Belt and Road, just came online in the last week, just over a week. And Iran is absolutely instrumental to China's Belt and Road strategy, right? It is an essential part of that. So China has a lot at risk there. There is unconfirmed reports that have been addressed in mainstream media, but that China has already sent at least 2 military cargo transports to Iran, at least 2, with their transponders going off before they were evidently scheduled to fly to, was it Luxembourg or something ridiculous like that, but instead they just were diverted to Iran, evidently. And there's also I think confirmed reports that China has sent 2 reconnaissance naval vessels into the theater, into the greater Persian Gulf area, that doubtless will be providing in real-time intelligence on U.S. troops and also, of course, on Israeli and U.S. aircraft and the like. So China seems to be stepping up here, at least potentially, to aid Iran to keep them afloat. But like with the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, the U.S. going to war with Iran is good for China in terms of the U.S. always with the intention of pivoting to Asia to confront China, right? Since the Obama administration, but always getting bogged down in either the Middle East or now in Eastern Europe,
wherever.
Yes, Ukraine. All of those military resources are now being wasted, and that gives China more time to prepare militarily, years potentially, until the U.S. is ready to confront them. And I can tell you right now that already the chances of the U.S. in a air and naval missile drone war with China off of China's own coast, which is the only scenario, right? The Taiwanese Straits or the South China Sea, already it's heavily tilted in China's favor. I think it's something like the last 5 war games that the Pentagon has run, China ends up winning those scenarios in the Pentagon's own war game. So giving China extra time, right, to prepare to, as the military balance shifts, as China's naval forces, air forces, missile forces, right? U.S. is very worried about a missile gap with the Chinese drones, right? Everything starts, then the U.S. won't even be able to contest that. So in geopolitical terms, again, as long as the Iranian government survives, then this can continue, you know, at, the longer it continues, the better for China.
I
Now,
put
of
it like
course,
this.
rhetorically, they're going to talk peace and diplomacy, but there is what countries do diplomatically, right? There is the rhetoric, and then there is the cold-blooded realpolitik, rationality, behind everything.
Well, here's the other part, and that is, as long as China, Iran, if the U.S. is caught up in fighting Iran and who knows who all else in the Middle East, the U.S. is getting softened up. So the U.S., the other two world powers, the U.S. wants this attempting to confront Russia. Well, that's going to turn it into a flop. But so they're getting softened up there. Now, as Russia and China literally both get stronger, as the actions of the U.S. empire literally strengthen the other two, right? They get stronger, we get weaker. But there's another element, and that is this, and I'll get your thoughts on it. And I know you've been following all of this. The MAGA people are not happy. The MAGA people, and here's what I mean. Internally, the United States is becoming internally politically less stable. It really is here. You have all kind of crazy protests, people flipping out. They're going to send the Marines, blah, blah, blah. And let me tell you, Mark, and I've said this, and you're an American. Man, Americans love their cars. They love hot rods. They like the pickup trucks. They like Corvettes. Americans love, young guys in America identify themselves by their car. Yeah, man, what do you got? Oh, I got this or that, right? Cars is a big part of America, or their pickup trucks, right? Americana. The one thing that will infuriate Americans is the price of gas going up. And I suspect that one of the other very, very important elements that people aren't taking into account is this particular conflict will destabilize this country. It'll destabilize this country.
So, cynic that I am,
okay,
I'm not so much on the idea of political instability. I myself believe that the potential MAGA backlash on this is blown out of proportion. That at the end of the day, most Republicans did not vote for Trump based on foreign policy, right? They did it on petty partisan politics, the socio-cultural perennial issues in the United States and so forth, and that the number of people within the MAGA movement who are really concerned about foreign policy and a foreign policy of non-intervention to the extent that it would make them turn on Trump is small. Now, they're probably all out there listening to this right now, right? But I think you guys know, right, that you're a minority, right? If you voted for Trump, if you consider yourself a MAGA person and you're disappointed, surely you're aware that you are not a majority of the Republican Party. I'm just saying that there. I think there's a little bit of projection trying to make the MAGA foreign policy disenchantment to be larger than it is. Now, there's always this perennial domestic phenomenon where Democrats hate all Republican wars and Republicans hate all Democratic wars, right? I mean, that's just, it's a case in point. So I do expect that we will see protests in the United States, right? Because the Democrat, the liberals, the college students will turn out in protest against an American war. They don't do that when a Democrat is president, right? You didn't see any protests against, the proxy war or anything else that Biden was doing. But you will see it this time. But it, again, will be mostly liberals and college student, people more, shall we say, leaning to the. I don't. It's not even the left in the United States. They don't have a left in the United States. The liberal side, anyway. Now, but on the issue of economics, I think you're spot on there. There, I could not agree with you more. Americans are already facing. They were facing inflation. Trump's tariff wars right? And the 10% tariff he's leveled on everyone, regardless. That raises the price of American electronics, consumer goods, everything across the board, right? Because, of course, those countries are going to pass that on to the American consumer when they can. And now the price of oil and gas is going to go through the roof. And that's going to punch home to much more than just filling up the pump, right? That affects the entire American economy because the American distribution system isn't something sensible by train or something like that. It's all cargo trucks, right? They go across the country, and that increases the price of gasoline for them, increases the price of everything. And by the way, it also increases the cost of the U.S. military, which is the world's biggest consumer of energy, regardless. So, that is going to have political repercussions.
Mark, when you talk about MAGA, something you got to understand. Trump got a lot of votes from people who weren't traditional MAGA. The reason Trump won in a blowout, but in some states, he got 25% of black males. 45%, I think national, 45% of Hispanic. He got we could go by race or whatever, but there were numerous groups.
Sure.
If you break them apart, that don't traditionally vote for. And what was that about? That was about economics. They were upset with the cost of food going up, the cost of housing, the cost of this, the cost of that. So you got the MAGA people who are self-identified as MAGA, right? But there are a lot of people that were on that train because out of economic desperation more than anything else. They were, God, for 4 years of Joe Biden, 4 years of Joe Biden, they would vote for, you know what I mean, anything. You could put out an old rusty nail, they'd vote for it. But those people, for starters, are going to be furious. But again, overall, man, I'm telling you, Mark, you walk out here and it's the people that, like, if you said, hey, do you know what's going on in the Middle East? They go, huh? Because they're just living their life. The type. They know nothing about anything. But if they wake up and it's $7 a gallon, $8 a gallon, and there's a sign that says, oh, by the way, sorry, you can only get gas if you've got an even number on today. Tomorrow is the odd number. Dude, I'm telling you, man, there's a lot of things that I predict that I guess on and things like that. I've been around a lot of time. You see gas prices go through the roof, this freaking country will go up in smoke.
The U.S. has a number of economic problems facing them at the moment, and Trump's tariff wars have only exacerbated that. Adding all of this to the mix I agree with you. It's going to lead to some economic pain, which will result in some political pain in the U.S. Unfortunately, because there's only two options, right? I mean, there's this perennial center liberal shuffle, right? I mean, it doesn't change anything foreign policy wise when the other party is elected, but it will lead to increased paralysis in Washington, right? Because if the Republicans lose the midterm elections, that will just make everything they do budget-wise more painful getting things through Congress, right? It won't result in any great change in foreign policy or anything like that, but it will lead to internal political speed bumps to everything, right? That's just part of the intrinsic petty partisan warfare of the U.S. political system. I won't call it a democracy because I don't believe it actually is in any way, real shape or form. Certainly not substantive. But I agree with you that economic problems will lead to political problems, and that will lead to all sorts of internal difficulties for Trump. But you have to admit that there is, between the political elites, right, in Congress, there is broad bipartisan support for this, right? When we're talking the media, the mainstream media, they're salivating, right? They just seem to really get their rocks off whenever the hegemon exercises military power against, a presumed adversary or obstacle around the world, and they're really just jumping, even if it's Trump, right?
And if it,
The
but
media,
you know what, Mark, you made a point about even if it's Trump. Here's the thing that I keep saying: there's a potential for this to go bad, and I suspect. Come on, it runs 3 times the size of Ukraine. Right? It ain't going to work out. You're not going to fly over and bomb and throw a bunch of Tomahawk missiles. Right now, I will guarantee you that Iran, anything of value, they're burying it, they're putting it away, they're prepping, saying they're going to hit us with a bunch of Tomahawks. But here's my point. Okay, you hit them or whatever. At some point, and let's say it doesn't work, let's say the things go up, let's say some Americans get shot down, get killed. Trump's the scapegoat. If it goes bad, the whole
it goes
system
bad, then there's
that
blood in the water.
supported him, and all these people, yes, we're behind Trump, he's doing the right thing, they will turn on him. And specifically, all of a sudden, they'll all say, well, we all weren't really in favor of this. I mean, we didn't think it would go this bad. Trump pushed us into it. He dragged us. He's like a fool. He is the biggest. The people who tried to destroy him are dragging him into something. Not that they have to drag him into it, but he's going along with them, and they will obliterate him, to use his favorite word, when and if it goes bad.
Sure, if it goes bad, blood in the water, right? That there's the press will jump on that at that time, usually a little bit after the fact. But so this whole thing about strikes at Fordo and nuclear enrichment facilities, this is all red herring, right? This is completely unimportant, right? If the U.S., dropping, what is it, the GBU 57, the massive ordnance penetrator, if they perfectly hit everything and wiped out every secret hidden facility, doesn't make any difference, right? If the Iranian government survives, they dismantled all of that with the JCPOA. And when Trump ripped it up, right, during his first administration, it took them up till now to rebuild everything, right? They have the knowledge, they have the the scientific, the industrial capacity. They'll just redo everything. That's not another here than there. This is about regime change, right? And again, the Western mainstream media is in full support of this. Washington Post, Politico, right? Articles everywhere saying, oh, this is all really about regime change. And we're fine with that. It's about time, right? That's the consensus in the media. So, but how does regime change happen, right? Because the U.S. is not going to land troops on the ground in Iran, right? That's not even on the cards. So the goal of all of these long-range strikes is simply to destabilize, to cause enough damage, to cause political, economic, and social chaos on the ground. And then, right, then every parasite that Mossad and the CIA have cultivated in Iran, and they've penetrated Iran, their government, their intelligence services, their security services really well. You see them assassinating whoever they want. You see these with drone operations, drone headquarters, and being operated. They even set up spike anti-tank guided missiles on remote control and cameras that could be controlled from beyond, right? All of this. And the big dogs of the U.S. and Mossad's quislings of their agents in Iran haven't even been unleashed yet. The Mujahideen Khalq, the MEK, these crazy brainwashed
cult. It's a cult.
They're a cult, right? They've been chilling. The U.S. has kept them chilling in Albania for the last decade plus, right? You can be sure that they are being prepped and activated. The Baluchi separatists that both the Israel and the U.S. support, right? That is what is going to have to do the work of regime change on the ground. Now, what that could lead to, what kind of government, I don't think it could lead to any government.
No.
Right? There's no unified opposition. In fact, while there is still plenty of room and time for the Iranian population to despair, particularly if the U.S. gets involved, right now, at least, to some extent, there is an observable rally around the flag feature going on. Now, we don't know if that will continue into the future, but right now, I'm far more worried about the internal threat of regime change from within than I am on any U.S. or Israeli long-range strikes. For heaven's sake, the U.S. couldn't even get air superiority over Yemen, right? So I'm not worried about the long-range strikes. I'm just worried about what that then sets the condition for what happens on the ground.
Yeah. Oh, well, Mark, do you need to go? It's 1. Do you need to jump?
Yeah, I'll just finish my thought.
Okay.
My last is that at the moment, I do not see a level of internal, uprising or externally provoked, of course, that would be possible of regime change.
Look what happened.
It doesn't mean that it won't happen in the future, but I don't see it now.
Look what happened in Russia.
Right.
Look what happened in Russia when they went after Russia. That's all I have to say. Go ahead, Mark.
Also, look what happened in Syria.
Yeah.
That came out of nowhere, right? I mean, no one was prepared for that collapse. So I'm far more watching what's going on the ground inside Iran, Mossad and the CIA and the MI6 up to their hips in it. But what I see right now is not enough. And that means the Iranian government at the moment would survive, no matter how many bombs and missiles the U.S. dropped on Iran, right? And, Iran will give them a fight. And right now, it's really hard with fog of war to who's doing more damage to who, right? The big thing is numbers game. How many missiles does Iran have left? We know that Iran is running out of air defense interceptors, but how many long-range standoff missiles for their aircraft do they have left? It's all numbers. This is a long-range strike war of attrition. Those things we don't know. Right now, I would say that it appears that Israel has been doing more damage. I think their strikes appear to me, with fog of war, to be more accurate, but there's a huge psychological impact just coming from the fact that more Iranian missiles are getting through the Iron Dome and David's Boomerang and whatever than are being stopped by it. And even if they're not, don't have the precision yet, and it's possible that Iran is mostly using their older stuff first. We don't know. We don't know those things. But in a long term, right? If this lasts a long period of time, if Iran holds out, even with the U.S. entering, things will tilt inevitably in Iran's favor because they have the capacity to build more missiles cheaper than air defense interceptors can be provided to Israel, right?
And they're like 200 times bigger. So let's face it, Israel can't take but so many shots. If Iran gets 10 hits to every one that Israel gets 20. Israel's small. They can't take that for a month.
Israel's small, tightly packed. Iran is a big country. There's a lot of spread out. The military has had time to spread things out. That said, they've made a lot of. The fact that they got caught by surprise in this is unforgivable. I mean, just stupidity. The fact that they didn't come to some type of military agreement with Russia is stupidity. The amount of penetration of their intelligence and security services is concerning, but there's still hope. There's still hope that they'll survive all of this. And there are signs that the Chinese could provide Iran with what they need, right? To win a long-term, long-range strike war of attrition. Israel loves short wars. Israel fears long wars, right? Because they don't have the industrial capacity. Everything they get, depends on the United States in that terms. And right now, the U.S. itself is short of air defense interceptor missiles. They can't provide Iran what it needs, right, for more than a week or so, right? Then they'll be tapped out as well. So let's watch the numbers. Let's watch the the missiles numbers, the air defense interceptor numbers, and let's watch what is happening. The attempts to launch some type of unconventional warfare on the ground in Iran. And those are the things I'll be looking forward in the next week. Not so much the latest insane, bloodthirsty ranting of the Orange Man's truths.
Well, and I'm about saying this. Look, there was times during World War II, early in the war, where people were like, "Oh boy, Russia's in big trouble. Oh boy, Russia's taking some beatings." But Russia won. Why? They had no choice. They were fighting for their lives. They're like, Russia always wins. Russia doesn't have a choice but to win because they get attacked by the West and they're fighting for their lives. There's nowhere for them to go. There's nowhere for them to hide. They got to fight. And when you give Sun Tzu, give your opponent somewhere to go. If your opponent doesn't have anywhere to hide,
the golden corridor.
Exactly. Yeah. And so now Iran, you haven't given them an out. They know you're trying that. The Iranians know they're going to screw us, destroy us. The people of Iran know if some neoliberal lunatic gets in trouble, gets in charge, we're all going to starve and we'll be screwed. Yet they don't have an out. They have to fight. So you've put them in a position where they got to fight. And good luck with that.
Back into a corner, yeah.
Never back a person into a corner. Never back an animal into a corner. And that's what happens. Mark Sleboda, once again, and this is very important, and this is critical. Everybody, Mark's good works must be, we not just rewarded, we got to help them out. We got to partake of it. Go to Boosty, that's boosty.to/TheRealPolitique, which is TIC. Okay, there you go. Mark Sleboda. We want you to subscribe. He's got all kinds of fun stuff you can do there. You can have a Discord chat. So go to The Real Politic with Mark Sleboda, and you can become a subscriber. You can donate all that great stuff. Guess what? It's sanctions proof. How great is that? Mark, thanks a lot, and certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with us.
Thanks for having me, Garland. Always an honor and a pleasure.
All right, talk to you soon. Everybody, don't forget, if you can afford it, and Patreon or buy me a coffee or any of the PayPal, whatever. Also, follow me on Rockfin, follow me on Rumble, follow me on whatever. Telegram. And last but not least, there's a PO box. So if you want to mail something, feel free. Thanks a lot. We're out.